Thus far, Bitcoin, crypto more broadly, has felt like a culture, as you put it, as like maybe the casino. It's more about investing, it's more about speculation. When does it become about usability, utility?
Yeah, and so that's what my book is about. It's about the productive side of blockchains, not the sort of speculative side that you see so much attention focused on. I believe that blockchains can be the foundation of a new era of the internet. So the internet has become increasingly consolidated. The top 5 tech companies account for 50% of the NASDAQ market cap, NASDAQ 100 market cap, up double from what it was a decade ago. Google and Apple have a duopoly on mobile operating systems. The top 1% of social networks account for 95% of social networking traffic and so forth. I think blockchains are the only credible technology for countering that consolidation and returning the internet to its original ideals as an open and democratic network. So that's what my book's about, not the kind of speculative side, but the productive side. And that's why the entrepreneurs I work with are excited about the space. That's why we're investing in the space. And so I wanted to tell that side of the story because I didn't feel like it had been heard enough.
Because, I mean, you come from both sides. You made your name with great bets on Kickstarter, on Pinterest, but then you really started to double down in the areas of Coinbase, Solana. I mean, the list goes on of some of the exposure your portfolio has now, Uniswap. Yeah. Where is the energy going, and how much is that, dare I say, starting to dovetail with the new explosion of AI, for example?
Yeah, so I view blockchains as an expansive technology where you can build games, social networks. A lot of interesting stuff is happening around new ways for creative people to make new income streams. So, for example, by selling digital collectibles to their audiences.
Make music.
Which is, like music, which is particularly important, I think, in an age of AI, because AI, I think, will put downward, generative AI lets you create content very cheaply, and therefore will put downward pressure on a lot of creative people's business models. And so I think it's a very important time to create new business models. Another example with AI are things like deepfakes, right? So we're seeing the internet, more and more deepfakes. I think you're going to see more and more sophisticated things like phishing attacks. And in that world, having a system where you can have, one of the things that blockchain is very good at is keeping sort of the provenance of a video. So you can say this video came from Bloomberg, and you can cryptographically prove that. And that can be very important in a world where, what was once ground truth video now becomes unreliable. So and by the way, I'm very pro AI, I think it's very exciting, but I do think it's important to have counterbalancing technologies, and I believe blockchains are a counterbalancing technology to AI.
Chris, I want to go back to kind of the origin of the rationale behind blockchain, right? So if I apply this blanket term DeFi to everything that we've just talked about, what's the conclusion you reach in the book about your own attitude towards the promise of DeFi?
Yeah, I mean, so DeFi, that of course refers to decentralized finance, which has been an interesting area. I think like with finance in particular is a highly regulated area, and so I think we've been working very hard on sort of policy matters and trying to put forth proposals. And so I think for DeFi, I think there's a lot of really innovative stuff that happened in DeFi, and I think people underestimate how successful in a lot of ways it was. So for example, with all of the market volatility of the last couple of years, these DeFi protocols like Uniswap and Compound and others performed perfectly, did not have issues. That said, I think to sort of realize its true potential, we have to figure out ways for DeFi to expand beyond kind of the the internet culture into the broader world. And I think that raises, that's in that case, it's very important to work with regulators, to work with existing institutions, to work with exchanges and all the other kind of participants in the broader financial ecosystem.
Chris, what happened to the ecosystem of startups then last year? Caroline and I look at all the backward-looking data, shows that if you look at it from a venture-backed deal count or dollar perspective, 2023 was a more difficult year. How did your funds perform, and what were the lessons you learned through that?
Yeah, we're regulated RIA, so I'm not allowed to speak about our own returns, but I will say that my view, if you look back kind of at the history of technology, is that innovation and financial markets are pretty independent. And so, for example, Facebook and YouTube were started in the sort of post-dot-com, after the dot-com bubble and the crash. Microsoft was started in Apple in the 70s in a very high interest rate environment. So, if you just kind of look at, what we do mostly early stage investing, and we think that we really look for technology trends and how they're moving and less sort of the day-to-day movements of the financial markets. So we've been very active. We've been continuing very consistently to deploy capital. We find great entrepreneurs. I'm very excited by the entrepreneurs that we see in the space. That's what I try to talk about in the book, is just all of the new and exciting ideas. I really feel like some of that story hasn't been fully told. And so I wanted to represent that and show kind of all the new things that can be built using this technology.
So when you are thinking of how much you've deployed already, are you able to give us an update of whether that cadence is growing at the moment, whether you've deployed most, whether LPs are like, yeah, we love it, we're going to commit more?
Well, we have I don't know what exactly we are allowed to disclose from a regulatory point of view, but we have plenty of, we're well capitalized, and we're excited by, the way I look at it is if great entrepreneurs walk in the door, we have capital and we will give them capital. But we don't have sort of a pace and try to put money out to work if we don't find great people and great ideas. But I think lately especially, there was sort of obviously like FTX and a lot of, sort of negative things that happen. I see a real kind of renaissance beginning at the early stage with innovation and just new ideas. And so I would expect that we would, we have been, and I would expect we continue to remain very active in the early stage venture, in the activity.
Chris, it's an election year, and policy, future regulation, future legislation has been a discussion for your industry for some time. How do you approach your lobbying efforts this year, or your communication with both sides of this election race to build a long term?
Yeah, I started going to DC a few years ago to sort of talk to policymakers about these topics, and one of my realizations is that big tech, big banks, lots of other kinds of parts of the economy are well represented in DC. We felt that small tech, that startups did not have proper representation. So we as a firm have decided that we are an institution that can help with that. And so we've decided to get more active in politics. We're taking a bipartisan approach. Our stance is pro-tech, pro-startup. I think that a lot of stuff, particularly around blockchains and crypto, is playing out in courts. And the problem with courts is it takes many, many years, and that creates uncertainty, and uncertainty deters good actors and attracts bad actors. So, I would argue that the right way to sort of approach tech policy is to look at a technology holistically. Every technology has bad things and good things about it. AI does, crypto does, and the right policy, sort of is crafted to maximize the good and minimize the bad. And so that's what we advocate for.
I'm interested in ultimately where you're seeing this renaissance coming from and happening. By its very nature, often those that are building in crypto are decentralized as well, and the application thereof. I think of Sky Mavis and how Axie Infinity just blew up in Asia in particular. Where is the excitement right now, and where do you invest? Is it always in equity? Are there token investments that you still want to make?
Yeah, we do both. We do equity and token investments. In terms of location, New York is actually, I would say, in the U.S. is sort of the hub for blockchain activity. But it's really a global movement. It's happening all over the place. China's doing a lot in Hong Kong. It's Asia's very active. Korea, Japan. We just opened a UK office. There's a lot of things in Europe. So it's a very global movement. I think more so than most technologies. And I think that also maybe skews some of the perspective in the U.S. because like a lot of the technology, for example, stablecoins, which are basically digital dollars, are very popular. There are 600 billion in transactions last month alone. And a lot of that happens around the world. And we don't see it as much here because we have, you have your credit card, you have your Fed and your credit cards, the payment systems work quite well here. And as we obviously have access to the dollar, but that's a very popular product around the world. So it really is a global movement.
Chris, we have 10 seconds. Do you hold Bitcoin or any other digital tokens personally?
Gosh, I'm very bullish and I do have a lot. I don't know. I'm not supposed to talk about my particular holdings, but I do have a lot of crypto. Yeah.